My story is a little bit of information coming out of the UK. And according to Benzinga staff writer Nina Zinjak, a research initiative led by Curaleaf Clinic in Manchester Metropolitan University found 90% of illegal cannabis samples in the UK contain dangerous contaminants, including mold, lead, and E.Coli. Testing involved 60 cannabis samples seized in Greater Manchester and Northumbria, with additional data from Welsh Emerging Drugs Database, Weedinos, I guess is what they call it, which reviewed over 33,000 drug entries. Alarmingly, 43% of the samples did not contain natural cannabis, while 38 had harmful substances and 27% included synthetic cannabinoids like spice, which can cause several health issues and might end up biting your friend's face off, like you saw in Florida a couple of years ago. A survey of 500 cannabis consumers revealed that 35% of cannabis for 35% of them use cannabis for medical conditions like anxiety and chronic pain, though 66% were unaware of the risks posed by contaminants. Many are exposed to these hazards due to limited legal access and medical marijuana, which is only available through the NHS for select severe cases. And to address this, Curaleaf launched its own "What Are You Smoking" campaign to inform the public about these risks with billboards and QR codes in high traffic areas to promote safe alternatives. I believe it's safe to say that Curaleaf, one of the world's biggest cannabis firms, is looking to bolster its own brand in the eyes of UK authorities and the public. Naturally, this raises questions about the validity of the study's data as the country moves toward its own legalized environment. I did not see anything in the article or in the original report published by Curaleaf Clinic about having independent lab tests on its own product against those that were seized in the study, or any control methods used to ensure that the information reported on was accurate and valid. And with the Wall Street Journal's recent article about the majority of legal lab-tested weed in the United States popping positive for mold, heavy metals, and many other contaminants, in my opinion, omitting any of that information would make me question the motivation behind this study even more. We all know that of the dangers of buying non-legal weed and what those are, and I think the majority of my colleagues on the show and our audience members would agree that buying legal, in the grand scheme of things, is safer than not. But a major firm trying to get in good before things pop off by producing a study like this without presenting the results to the public from a balanced standpoint, to me, raises more questions about why Manchester Metropolitan University decided to go with Curaleaf over other potential partners, and why they didn't discuss any potential conflicts of interest either. We live in a world full of mis and disinformation, but also have plenty of tools to reveal paper trails and possible motives behind stuff like this. So while I applaud the effort for getting information out to the people, I think data transparency is more important now than ever. Taking a more measured approach would have been more satisfactory to me as to what the results were found to be. Those are just my thoughts. I'm Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad on the street for High at 9 News. What do you guys think?
Man, you know what? I'll tell you what, Rico. I'm really glad that they didn't have testing of cannabis back in the day when everybody smoked brickweed, because otherwise, oh man, people would be freaking out about all the mold and things like that they inhaled in their lungs, and all the what was it? Was it paraquat and all that other craziness?
I mean, listen, I've smoked Mexican dirt weed out of a pipe we made with a fucking Coke can when I was in high school. Like, you know what I mean? We put a lot of dumb shit in our bodies. But I think that, the scarier part to me is that, they're finding spice and, shit that will actually fuck you up. Mm-hmm. And that there's no good reason to be ingesting in this.
That's fair.
Allegedly. I would say allegedly, because like I said, there was no revealing of any controls that were used with the study where they got certain product over others. It was just 60 samples from what was seized. So I would put a big asterisk next to this study, and it's funded by Curaleaf.
Mm-hmm.
So we're following the money, Rico?
I always do.
Mm-hmm.
It's just straight propaganda from the English Home Office. The Home Office is it's Great Britain's DEA, and they're really big into propaganda and drug war lies to the system running as it.
Mm-hmm.
And to keep old Fat Fingers Charles in charge.
How much lead do you think I took into my body when I was drinking out of the rusty water hose as a kid because we were outside playing and didn't go back in?
I'm not touching that.
I mean,
what did I ingest
really, you
from
probably
the
had a
spigot?
hose. Probably had a hose that was U.S. made, and so probably weren't actually ingesting lead. You probably had like high quality U.S. made gas.
Oh, so you
sense.
think it was U.S. made? I bet it was. I bet it was.
And
Made in the U.S. Yeah, when we were kids in the 70s and 80s, most things that we bought and used were manufactured in the U.S.
High quality.
Outsourcing really took off in the very late 80s and early 90s. Was accelerated by Clinton and NAFTA.
Yep, I do remember that.
Bastards.
That is very, very, very true. Yeah.
Look how pretty Yarrow's curls look today.
Yeah, Yarrow, you're pretty quiet. You want to take them off the shelf, Jenny, and pull a string?
Yeah, you can pull something. I think that Rico is bullseye. When you have a single company underwriting a study, it's hard to not wonder what their motivations are because typically companies are in business to be in business.
Yeah.
And so there's that aspect. Rico also touched on a good point, which was there wasn't a control group because we weren't also testing regulated products. What troubled me was that a high percentage of the products weren't even cannabis. And I don't know that we've really advanced the art and science of understanding the potential contaminants that come from an unregulated supply chain. And is England getting any closer to having an adult use program that will allow people to benefit from a regulated supply chain if they're not medical patients? And so I don't think any of those things are furthered in any sort of measurable way. And so, yeah, I do believe that the benefit of regulated cannabis is consumer safety when it works. And we have examples, we have recent examples in big markets and not big markets of it not working. But you may call me a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. And I still believe that the supply chain safety that a regulated marketplace can provide when it functions properly is the singular biggest benefit of regulation. And so, yeah, we did a lot of stupid stuff when we were younger, none of which I want my children to do. And I put a lot of things into my body without understanding the long-term effects. And society evolves, right? If you go back 300 or 400 years, we were doing human sacrifices to make sure we had a good harvest. Or we were doing all sorts of other crazy stuff. Or we were enslaving people because they looked different. Or if they had chi-chis, they didn't get to vote, right? And so looking back at the history of the stupid stuff that humanity does will always be inspiration for change, but never a good reference point for what our risk profile should be in terms of how we interact with plants, plant medicine, and de-risk that process.
Yeah.
I think the whole regulated supply chain and safety thing definitely sounded good, and it's definitely a good blurb.
Yeah.
What we've seen with the lack of auditing of labs, the lack of uniformity among testing methods, the constant exposure of metric not functioning at all, and the DCC basically also not functioning, is that what you have now is this veneer of safety until you test any product and find all of the things that are in it. I would say that your easiest route to safety is to grow your own cannabis and or to source cannabis from people that you know personally, have ethics, integrity, and are not putting anything on their cannabis.
Yes, but, and here's my yes, but to that. You can still be over a fence from a vineyard and get overspray.
Yep.
You could still use soil that
Spray
you thought
over.
was okay, but the soil's far from okay. And so even with home grow, there are ways in which the unknowledgeable cultivator can accidentally infect themselves. You can have pet
Dander.
and anti-flea and tick medication and go treat your dog and then go play with your plants. And so there are plenty of ways that the home grower can also be unaware and still not provide themselves clean cannabis. But to Matthew's point, the chances, I believe, are much, much less.
You should really wash your hands after you put the flea and tick medicine on your dog. Yarrow.
Yeah, that Advantix.
Just not put that stuff on your dog.
I mean, and then, but then
the craziest thing about that, not
fleas.
to go too deep down a hole, but you put Literally putting cancerous stuff on your dog's skin, then gets on your floor, your furniture, its hands, and you're just boosting tumor formation in your dog. It's been proven.
Don't worry, Mickey, we won't do it to you, Papa Bears.
I'm looking forward to the moment where we kind of take a collective deep breath and realize that maybe plastic and carcinogenic chemicals aren't going to be our savior. We begin to look for new methods.